So what is an archive? Archives can be informal or formal, curated collections of materials. We all have informal archives. Maybe a shoebox of notes passed in class, a family photo album, or your preserved social media posts. The Society of American Archivists defines archives this way. Take note of the enduring value of these materials. Because archives are created contemporaneously, or as the event happens, we don't always know what will be of enduring value to those who come after us. Who keeps archives? All kinds of organizations, even schools. At CSUDH, we have the Girth Archives and Special Collections on the 5th floor of the library. It actively collects and preserves materials about Carson, CSUDH, the history of the CSU, and other California history, such as that of the Watts Rebellion and the Japanese-American internment of the 40s. A lot of stuff that ends up in archives wasn't necessarily created to document the historical record. Most items are created because of legal, financial, or regulatory reasons. For example, at CSUDH, a legal reason for creating a record might be documenting a building code or laws on how we hire people. Financial records are created as we document our monthly expenditures, and regulatory records are created as we document our NCAA athletic requirements. Other kinds of primary sources that might be collected include photos, oral histories, newspapers, letters, maps, and more. Let's look at some examples from the CSUDH archives. These documents come from the Dominguez estate, which leased land in the Carson area from the 1800s on. While these records were initially collected because of their legal and financial ramifications, they now offer us some enduring historical understandings of that time period. For example, let's look at this lease for Mr. Torres. It's a pretty typical lease. However, if we look at this land lease for Mr. Kakuta from 1925, we can see it's different. The impacts of the alien land laws are especially visible, which were designed to prevent Asian Americans from having equal rights to white Americans, particularly property. We see that through the additional pasted-in component and his signature requirements. This record wasn't collected in 1925 to compare to Mr. Torres, or to document racism of that time period. However, we can see it today. Many archival records seem similarly banal, but together they form a story. As anything designed and curated by people, choices are made in what to include and what to exclude. Archives are places of political power in how those things are included or excluded. Those gaps and omissions are called an archival silence. Here's another example. This is a collection that the CSUDH Archives has acquired called the Compton History Collection. It was started by Robert Gillingham, who moved to Compton in 1906. He wrote histories of Compton, was a teacher, and eventually became the vice president of Compton College. He collected lots of information and records and loved Compton. As you take a closer look at the boxes of records we have, you'll notice that the first 5 of the 7 boxes in his collection are focused on the white people of Compton. For example, lots of information on white people who moved to Compton from the Midwest from the 1880s to the 1930s. There is practically nothing on notable Black residents. It's not until 1969, when Compton elected its first African-American mayor, Douglas Dollarhide, that a Black person is explicitly mentioned in Gillingham's archive. This is a big gap, an omission, an archival silence. Here are 2 people Gillingham doesn't mention: Cornelius, or Corny, Johnson, who went to the 1936 Olympics and won the gold medal in high jump. In addition to setting Olympic records, he graduated from Compton College. This is where Gillingham was a vice president. Another notable absence is that of Hayes Edward, Big Ed, Sanders. He won a gold medal at the 1952 Olympics and was the first African American to win as a heavyweight. He also attended and trained at Compton College. Just like Gillingham, all archives have silences. While some are easier to spot than others, you should always pay attention to what story is being told and whose voice is being shared. In this week's discussion post, you'll explore in more depth why some items are collected and what stories are represented in archives. Also, when campus opens up for in-person attendance, we encourage you to come check out and study archival materials and silences for yourself. Many archives aren't digitized as a component of geographic information privilege. Only those who can easily make it to an archive might see the unique materials housed there. We would love for you to stop by and see what CSUDH archives have to offer.